Let's map out the most infamous stretch of ocean on Earth. Draw a line from Miami to San Juan, up to Bermuda, and back down to Florida. Within this specific geographic corridor, a massive number of ships and aircraft have vanished, cementing its reputation in popular culture as a cursed zone of unexplained disappearances. But if you look closely at the data used by the people who actually underwrite the financial risk of global shipping, a strange paradox emerges. Marine insurance markets, like Lloyd's of London, track maritime casualties with absolute mathematical precision, yet they do not charge a single cent in higher premiums for commercial vessels passing through this supposedly deadly zone. The United States Coast Guard and the Navy maintain the exact same stance. After decades of continuous, high-volume search and rescue operations, their official actuarial data shows no anomalous rate of disaster here compared to any other heavily traveled oceanic sector. The Bermuda Triangle is an epistemological illusion. It is a socio-cultural construct manufactured by mid-century sensationalism, which successfully obscured the calculable physical, meteorological, and mechanical realities of the region. To understand what actually happened to the lost vessels of the North Atlantic, we have to throw out the pulp paperbacks. We need to look at deep-sea bathymetry, aerospace engineering schematics, and the rigorous findings of modern forensic oceanography. This global data visualization maps the actual most dangerous oceans on the planet based on a massive 2013 maritime risk study commissioned by the World Wildlife Fund. Notice the heavy concentrations of foundering and collisions in the South China Sea and the North Sea. The Bermuda Triangle exhibits a complete statistical void by comparison. When you cross-reference those missing ship reports against the sheer volume of daily operational traffic passing through the Americas, Europe, and the Caribbean, the accident rate aligns perfectly with normal global baseline probabilities. The environment itself is engineered to erase evidence. The bathymetry of this region features extreme, sudden drops, most notably the Puerto Rico Trench, which contains the Milwaukee depth plunging nearly 8,400 meters down into the Atlantic abyss. Any surface vessel or aircraft that founders over those coordinates is subjected to immense hydrostatic pressure. Finding structural wreckage or even a residual oil slick at those depths is practically impossible, creating the illusion of a ship vanishing without a trace. At the surface, the region is dominated by the Gulf Stream. Driven by thermohaline circulation, this current acts as a massive, turbulent aquatic river. With surface velocities approaching 2 meters per second, the Gulf Stream possesses the kinetic capacity to physically transport floating debris or life rafts hundreds of miles from a vessel's last reported coordinates in a matter of hours. By the time a search operation begins based on a final radio transmission, the wreckage has already been swept away. Abyssal trenches and high-velocity currents do not require a supernatural explanation. They form an environment that naturally sanitizes the surface of disaster sites, providing a blank canvas for mythological speculation. In March 1918, the massive USS Cyclops vanished en route to Baltimore, claiming 306 lives in the largest non-combat disaster in U.S. naval history. No wreckage was ever found, and no distress call was sent. Historical records reveal the Cyclops was heavily loaded with manganese ore. This dense, volatile cargo requires meticulous distribution. If it shifts unpredictably in rough seas, it drastically alters the ship's center of gravity, causing an immediate, irrecoverable capsize. A forensic review of the Naval Registry reveals a horrifying pattern. During World War II, 2 of the Cyclops' sister ships, the Proteus and the Nereus, vanished under nearly identical conditions, carrying the same heavy ore through the same weather systems. This points to a severe, inherent structural design flaw in the Proteus-class colliers. The massive I-beams composing their keels were uniquely susceptible to snapping under extreme stress. The meteorological trigger required to exploit that flaw is highly common off the Florida coast. When massive storms moving south intersect with localized weather systems spinning off the continent, they generate constructive wave interference. This interference can spawn rogue waves exceeding 30 meters in height. Modern commercial hulls are engineered to withstand braking pressures of about 21 pounds per square inch. A towering rogue wave delivers a crushing, localized hydrostatic impact approaching 140 psi. Hydrodynamic simulations conducted by researchers at the University of Southampton show exactly how this destroys a ship. A steep rogue wave physically suspends a massive vessel between two wave crests. With midship buoyancy completely removed, the immense shear stress literally snaps the iron keel in half. The ship plummets to the ocean floor in minutes. The loss of the Cyclops was the catastrophic intersection of compromised naval architecture and the supreme kinetic force of the Atlantic Ocean. The mythology extends vertically into aviation, anchored by the December 1945 loss of Flight 19, a squadron of 5 U.S. Navy TBM Avenger torpedo bombers. 2 hours into a routine navigation exercise, flight leader Lieutenant Charles Taylor radioed that his compasses had failed. Suffering from sudden, catastrophic spatial disorientation, Taylor became convinced he was operating over the Gulf of Mexico. He repeatedly ordered the squadron to fly north and east, vectors that pushed them further out into the deep Atlantic, directly away from the Florida coastline. Official accident reports confirm that the 4 junior pilots in the formation had fully functional compasses. They knew their correct heading. However, strict military discipline and rapidly deteriorating radio communications prevented them from overriding their commander's navigational orders, forcing the entire squadron to fly until their fuel gauges hit zero. The incident was heavily compounded when a massive PBM-5 Mariner flying boat, dispatched to search for the Avengers later that night, also vanished. The PBM Mariner series was notoriously prone to fatal fuel vapor leaks, earning the grim moniker the flying gas tank among naval aviators. At 7:50 p.m., a commercial tanker reported a massive mid-air explosion and an ensuing oil slick precisely in the sector where the Mariner was operating. The Navy's most legendary mystery is a tragic study in human navigational error, the fatal rigidity of military hierarchy, and accidental combustion. Post-war commercial aviation suffered similar fates, specifically the British South American Airways flights, the Star Tiger and Star Ariel, lost in 1948 and 1949. Both aircraft were Avro Tudor IVs, civilian adaptations of the Avro Lincoln heavy bomber. The Tudor's internal systems were notoriously unreliable, notably the uninsulated, fuel-burning cabin heaters crammed tightly beneath the passenger floorboards. This schematic of the fuselage cross-section reveals a fatal aerospace design flaw. The extremely hot cabin heater is positioned directly adjacent to pressurized hydraulic lines. An undetected hydraulic vapor leak contacting that unmonitored heater triggers a massive instantaneous explosion. Because there were no automated fire suppression systems or alarms in the heater bay, the crew would receive zero warning. The complete lack of a final SOS transmission from these passenger planes was a function of explosive aerodynamic failure. An aircraft blowing apart in midair entirely precludes the physical possibility of sending a radio distress call. If the structural, physical, and navigational failures of these incidents are so thoroughly documented in military and corporate archives, how did the myth gain total global dominance? The answer lies in the highly profitable methodology of mid-century pulp authors. Writers like Charles Berlitz engineered the modern parameters of the mythos, packaging unrelated tragedies into a single sensationalist narrative. In 1975, research librarian Lawrence Cush dismantled the genre. He bypassed the paperbacks entirely, executing a rigorous forensic review of the original unredacted military accident reports and historical weather data. Cush proved the mystery was sustained purely by extreme confirmation bias. Authors deliberately omitted historical records of massive hurricanes, artificially padded their statistics with shipwrecks that occurred in the Pacific Ocean, and in some cases, cited vessels that never existed in any maritime registry. The myth's survival depends on an epistemological failure, the public's willingness to prioritize a compelling, supernatural story over the dense, dry reality of actuarial tables and official accident inquiries. Look at this combined environmental model. When you layer the massive volume of global traffic density, the immense kinetic velocity of the Gulf Stream, the 8,000-meter drop of the Puerto Rico Trench, and the collision of Atlantic storm fronts, a clear picture emerges. The Bermuda Triangle is a highly trafficked, highly volatile maritime crossroads. The losses of these famous vessels and aircraft are profound human tragedies, but they are the strictly natural consequences of shifting ore, extreme spatial disorientation, explosive hydraulic leaks, and sheer kinetic force. The human psyche inherently prefers to assign a highly structured supernatural mystery to what is otherwise terrifying, random environmental violence. But statistically, historically, and scientifically, the Bermuda Triangle behaves exactly as the laws of physics dictate.